welcome, welcome. Welcome to our event, Fall Finances from Fear to Freedom. We are so excited that you're here. Maybe you're here because you have heard about these incredible products and you want to get started, but you're not sure how you can afford them. Maybe you've heard some of the stories from some of your friends, something like how it helped me to not have daily headaches or daily fevers anymore, how it helped me to have less anxiety, more energy, and drop some weight. Or maybe you're here because you are praying for a second stream of income, maybe a replacement income, or just a way to breathe life into your family's finances again. Whichever reason that you are here tonight, we are so glad. And I think that you are going to leave inspired and find that just maybe this is the opportunity that could be the answer for you. We called this financial fear to freedom because about 50% of Americans have admitted that they're concerned, anxious, or fearful about their current financial well being. 66% of Americans say that they would struggle to come up with $1,000 in a case of an emergency. Money is actually listed as one of the top 10 most common reasons for divorce. Americans hold over $1 trillion in credit card debt, with the average person accruing about $1,000 of debt between now and Christmas. So it is a very normal thing, but it does not have to be that way. The four incredible ladies and couple on the call tonight, many of them have been in the same exact boat that some of you are in, but they have found a way to take advantage of an incredible opportunity where they get to share their heart and share passion and love on people, help them feel better. And it has also taken them from fear to freedom. So we're so excited to share. The first person that we're going to hear from tonight is my friend Julia, who is a wife and a mom who actually once sold her wedding band to be able to have enough money to pay for Christmas for her girls one year. But now she has retired both herself and her husband. They've gotten to go to 2 private islands for free. She's been able to buy plane tickets and pay for her whole family to live at the Grand America Hotel for 3 weeks during the adoption of her little boy, Reese. So first, can you take us back, Julia, and tell us a little bit about how life was before Plexus?
Yes, thank you, Brooke. I started Plexus about 5 years ago, and before Plexus, my husband was in the ministry. He was a youth and college pastor for about 10 years. I'm a preacher's daughter, so I was used to ministry life. And so, honestly, I never really thought about us being poor. We were always rich in love, and we just did what we had to do. And now, selling my wedding band seems like such an extreme thing, but back then it was. I just wanted to provide for my kids, and that was something I didn't really need to be married, so I sold it. But thankfully, I feel like we were protected. We didn't really have credit card debt, but just student loans, because we both have. I have a teaching degree, and we met at Troy University. We had student loans. And medical bills were just piled high. And so we just couldn't make ends meet. So we didn't even have a budget. I tell people, a lot of people know I met my upline at a Dave Ramsey class, but we had no money to put in the envelopes. It made no sense. It was like, there's no money to put in the envelope, so we couldn't even have a budget. So that's kind of where we were. We were drowning and didn't really even know it at the time, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. So when you first heard about Plexus, you probably just put it out of your mind thinking there's no way. What made you eventually want to give it a try, and what was preventing you from it?
You're exactly right. We wanted nothing to do with it. We made a decision early on in marriage that ministry and selling stuff did not go hand in hand. And we just said we would never do it. So when I started seeing my friends post, I blocked them. Many people know my story. I told them if they mentioned it to me again, I wasn't coming back to hanging out with them. But really what caught my attention was a friend, 2 of my children had severe skin issues. And a friend just graciously gave me our ProBio 5 and our body cream and just begged me to use it. Still at that point, I rolled my eyes, and it really wasn't. My husband actually had stepped away from the ministry to finish seminary, and he was working as a driver, and he lost that job. And we kind of hit rock bottom. That was when I knew we were in trouble because we had 4 small children. We had no income coming in. Like I said, we were already not making ends meet. What were we going to do? And I was passionate about being a stay-at-home mom. And like it kind of shows like I did whatever it took to stay a stay-at-home mom, but I really thought, okay, I'm gonna have to go back to the classroom. So I spoke to a friend and I was like, how much money are you making with Plexus? She told me, and it blew my mind, honestly. And I thought, if you can make that much money, I can make $1,000 with Plexus. And so that's when my wheels started turning, that if these products worked and my friends can make money, maybe I could do this so I could just, again, not make millions of dollars or anything, but just stay at home and continue with what I was passionate about.
I love that. So some of you may be here, your friend has basically bribed you and you're on that boat where you're about to block them too. Don't say no just yet. Have an open mind here because this could literally change everything. So, okay, you saw that the products worked, you saw that you could make money, but there wasn't hardly any money. So how did you end up taking that plunge and getting started with your first month?
Well, I tell people this is probably not the best advice, but in true Carty fashion, I think Jared got like his last paycheck or something. And so I was like, oh, we got money in the bank. And so I bought the welcome pack, and the next day my checkbook bounced. Again, I don't recommend that, bouncing a checkbook. However, I knew that all I had to do was sign up 3 friends. And that's what I love about this company is it's turnkey. That next Friday, after signing, and I had my friends ready, I had my sister ready, and that was, $175 just like that, and that replenished that money for that welcome pack. So I think if if it's tight, just come in with a plan, and you can replenish that money right then.
Absolutely. I love that about our company that just 3 friends, you can earn $175 to $420 literally that next week. That's incredible. So you've definitely come a long way since then. But one of my favorite things is hearing what your first paycheck covered. Can you tell us a little bit about that and then what the financial freedom has done for your family since then?
Yes, that's probably one of my, it'll forever probably be my favorite memory of Plexus. So we moved back to Alabama. I joined 2 weeks before coming back, and we had no idea how we were going to pay the first month's rent. So here I was driving up to internet because we didn't have internet. So every night I would drive to a little restaurant to get free internet to message people and post. And I'll never forget, I was in the parking lot of the grocery store and I got that email that told me I was paid. And I was just hoping it was enough to cover my kids' probiotic and my pink drink because I needed to be a product of the product. And when I opened it up, it was to the penny enough not only to cover our triplex, but also our first month rent. And I still will go into Publix. I think I Marco Polo with some friends the other day and start crying because I remember being there and that's what it paid for. And so that's when I knew that the Lord was going to use this to change our family's future. And that's what he's done. So see, I could start crying now. So sorry.
I love that. And that's what I love about this. We're talking real money here, and we're going to talk some of the figures later, but it's not about all of us just wanting to go buy a yacht. It's real people who just love our families and wanted to live life to the fullest and help other people do the same so they can afford to buy food for their kids and pay rent. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Julia. So the next person I get to introduce you to is my friend Jen, and she and her husband were diligent followers of the Dave Ramsey budget, and they were actually just trying to find a way for her to be able to stay home with her daughter Pepper. She actually really just wanted to be able to make $1,000 to stay home with her, and she actually remembers spending nights and weekends making oversized rulers and growth charts, hoping that that might be the answer to those prayers. Well, she started Plexus. Her husband told her that she had to get it paid for so that they didn't have to take it out of their budget. She started sharing, and now not only has she been able to go to the same private island that Julia's been to twice for free, she's been able to take her family on a Mediterranean cruise and move across the country and build her dream home. So tell us a little bit about your life before Plexus, back when you were just looking for a way to stay home.
Right, Brooke. Well, thank you for hosting this tonight and having me on. I just want to kind of roll back a few years to really paint a picture for what our life was like. My husband and I really are no stranger to financial struggle. Electric cutoff notices were common at my house. So I've actually, until Plexus came along, have really never known financial security. But when we got married in 2009. So we were older when we got married. And so we were married for 3 years before Plexus came along. And just like you had mentioned, financial struggles being a very, it's a pain point in most marriages, a leading cause of divorce. That was our biggest pain point, but it wasn't. And here's some background here for you. We had, in those first 3 years, both of us went through a period where both of us were unemployed. Thank the Lord in his provision, those periods did not overlap. But both of us also had temporary positions, not secure jobs. So we lived on a prayer that our positions, they would keep kicking the can down the road. And thankfully they did, but then they ran out a couple of times. So financial stress was major in our first 3 years of marriage. So not only that, but I know this man loves me because he has been a Dave Ramsey. I keep this just to remind myself of where we came from. He has been a Dave Ramsey fan long before we got married, and not a fan of debt. Well, I came into the marriage not only with a mountain of student loans, but a similar mountain of credit card debt. And I know that was really hard for him, but I'm so thankful that he loved me anyways and took that on. So you have to know that already all the troubles in those 3 years before Plexus came along, plus this debt, created some pretty big arguments. And I have to defend him and say, like, this was not him, but every single argument we had heated discussion about what we were going to spend money on, what we were going to keep in our Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University budget, what we were going to cut. Every single one of those ended for me in shame. Shame because I was the reason. I was the reason why we were arguing. I was the reason why, when we had a baby, or when we had her, because we had her a year before I started Plexus, that I wouldn't be able to stay home. I knew I was the reason because of my irresponsibility. So that was not him reminding me. This was the enemy of my soul reminding me, this is your fault. This is your fault. You're the reason why you're having so much trouble. So when Plexus came along, I was not really interested in the financial opportunity right away. That changed quickly. So, but that's what it was. And so when I think about those years, I think about a lot of stress, a lot of heated discussions, and a lot of shame around my fault in that matter. So I've never shared that part of my story, but I wanted to tonight. So
thank you so much for sharing that and being so vulnerable, because as you were talking, I was literally thinking of conversations and remembering stress or anxiety that would come from that. And I know that that's not just you. I know that a lot of people watching are probably feeling the same thing. And your story is going to give them hope that you don't have to stay there. So let's just stay there a little bit longer and talk about, when did you first hear about Plexus? And you obviously said you didn't want to spend money on it. What was preventing you from doing that? And then what made you finally decide to do it?
Right. It was May of 2012, and I had been seeing my friend Erin Harrison's posts on Facebook, and I was really only interested in the products. I had my daughter had just turned 1, and I was really had been struggling to lose that last bit of baby weight. So I really wanted to try the products. Again, every conversation that would come up about what we were going to spend money on, I knew how it would end. So, we would have the conversation. So it took a little bit, but he was supportive of me trying these products. But with that caveat, I think you mentioned that I would break even. So he was really gracious in our budget, and we made room, probably by less snowball, if you know Dave Ramsey language, less snowball to create 2 months worth of me being on the product. So, but I had never, ever wanted to do this sort of thing. I'd always held it at an arm's length. I didn't want to be that girl. But honestly, whenever my sponsor was like, hey, you just takes like around three people taking the products, and that will cover the cost of what you want to take. And I was like, okay, well, I can probably do that. I can probably find 3 people that want to take these products. That, and then she told me I had this big burning question in my mind that was just holding me back from like, oh, if I do this and I have to start covering my products every month. And I was like, do I have to host parties? And when she was like, no, you don't have to host parties. We're not a party driven company. I was like, that just like, that was a barrier for me. And when that came down, I was like, okay, I can do this. I can at least cover my products. So that was how I got started.
I love that. And then I love about your story, hearing you talk about that you just wanted to make the $1,000 to stay home. And I remember one of the quotes I heard you say where you said the best alarm clock in the world is the little pitter patter of your kids' feet. So you definitely were able to cover your products and be able to stay home. Can you tell us a little bit more about all of the financial freedoms this opportunity has brought for your family?
Um, yes, for sure. I mean, I could talk about that all day, but you're right. Like, it was really painful leaving in the morning to go to work and not seeing my daughter. I mean, that was horrible. That was just, and knowing that I would have like an hour that night with her by the time I got home from work. So, yeah, it was so sweet. I mean, that was probably my first favorite thing, obviously, was just being home, for all those things. I mean, just not having to send her away, and that was incredible. But I would just say like autonomy. I think that's how you say that. Just like being for Cody and I both, because it was about a couple years in, Cody could see like this was really where our focus needed to be, was on this business and on our small children. So he walked away from his job, and now we work together and we get to design our work life around our number one priority, which is our family. And that's really one of my favorite things, is just that we get to own our time. And I heard someone say something about time freedom, and time freedom is not that you don't ever have to work. It's just you get to choose. You get to choose when you do the work. So we design that, and I love that. We did, like you mentioned, we built our dream home, but honestly, we're not really things kind of people. We're more experiences and memories. So, we went on a Mediterranean cruise, which was fantastic. But my husband and I, we went to Israel a couple of years ago, which was the major bucket list item. And I'm just thinking, like, if we did not have Plexus to go on that trip, we would have saved for years and years and years and years and years, because we'd be paying cash, right? Trusty old FPU. We would have been paying cash for that trip. But the other piece is we wouldn't have necessarily had the time to be able to take off of our jobs for 2 weeks. I mean, that would wipe out your entire vacation. So that was something really amazing. But then the other piece that is just like, it's like asking me to choose my favorite blessing is like having you ask me who my favorite child is, or which my favorite Plexus product is. It's kind of hard, but I love how the president of Plexus says, if you're blessed, be a blessing. And we have been blessed so abundantly with Plexus, and we are able to give back abundantly. And we were always very faithful to tithe. That's been it's always been really important to us. So even now, to be able to give abundantly, and we strive to be the widow who gave joyfully and sacrificially, but then also be really good stewards of what the Lord has given us, like the servants in the parable of the talents, and really be wise with the blessings. So, but giving back would be another piece that has just been brought more joy than I probably would have even imagined, honestly. So, I think people sometimes think, like they have this weird thing about money and making money. But the more that you're blessed, the more that you can give and make a difference and make an impact. So, yeah, that's to wrap it up. You're like,
I love that. I
man.
love it. I actually read a quote this past week that said, nobody would have remembered the Good Samaritan if he just had good intentions. He had money too. And it takes money to be able to give back. And it takes money to be able to do these things. And I also really love that she pointed out this isn't just some magic ticket we're trying to say, drink a pink drink and you're going to, make a ton of money. This is a real job and an opportunity. Julia mentioned having to drive to go get internet. And she is able now to work her schedule around their baby that they just got to adopt. He's the happiest baby you'll ever meet. They can take turns, take him with them. They can work doing that. Jen talked about, time freedom. We get to design this life. No boss tells me when to work. It is work, but it's so amazing and fun, and you'll be blessed beyond your wildest imagination. So next, you're going to get to hear from Emily, and she's a young wife and mom who babysat and sold things online while her husband was deployed. She actually remembers a time when she only had $12 in her bank account and remembers living credit card to credit card and selling pictures right off of her wall to pay the bills. But she finally went against her major skepticism and dove into this. And since then, she's been able to pay off all debt, allow her husband to retire from the military, all before her 30th birthday. So Emily, tell us about that life before Plexus.
It's really weird hearing you say that out loud. We will be debt free coming next year. We're like super close. So I just want to specify that, but I'll get to that in just a second. Life before Plexus, we were that military couple. We never got to see our family. I was so envious of my little sister who had my mom right down the road. We didn't live paycheck to paycheck because military paycheck's like nothing. It was literally credit card to credit card. And I watched my husband get his first gray hair in his 20s because I felt like it was my fault. I'm like, man, we got married and now we're having a baby and like all this stressful things, one after the other. So I worked just as hard. We never saw each other, like except for bedtime and maybe dinner time. And I just would daydream at work. I don't know if any of you watching this work a 9-to-5 job, but I did for many years. I worked my tail off for a boss who went on these lavish trips and got to go golf for lunch, and I would just sit there and daydream and think about that. So for me, before Plexus, I was a daydreamer, and yes, I sold pictures off my wall. I sold clothes out of my closet. I will never, ever, ever forget having a long distance conversation with my husband who was deployed, and he called me and he was like, "What are we gonna do?" At this time, our baby was about 4 months old. He had not yet met him. They were later going to meet for the very first time when Sterling was 6 months old. And I knew that I had 2 months to figure it out. And I was so desperate. I was looking at becoming a secret shopper or like secret restaurant person to earn some cash because I was like, I just can't leave my kid. And I can take my kid shopping. I can take my kid to dinner. And we did the math. And what it came down to was if I went back to work, I'd be working for free. Childcare in San Diego, California was extremely expensive, and you had to provide the babies food and diapers and all this kind of stuff. And not working was not an option, but working and childcare was just working for free. And my husband was like, "You're going to have to stay home and find something to do from home." And I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to give anyone the luxury of hearing my baby giggle, of hearing him wake up in the morning, the pitter patter thing that Jen shares often. I'll never forget her sharing that because I felt that. Sterling was our rainbow baby. We lost a baby during Scott's previous deployment. And so here we were, he was leaving and I was going through these hard times. He was going through hard times overseas. And I was like, I'm sick of this life. Like, what? I didn't sign up for this. And Scott was like, well, I did. And you married me. So we got to figure this out. So life pre-Plexus was stressful and lonely and scary because I didn't know what we were going to do. That was life before Plexus.
And maybe that's how some of you are watching is you're here because your friend said there was an opportunity, but you literally can't even think about getting started because you don't know how you're going to pay your next bill. And I want you to see that we understand where you're coming from. And then my next question for Emily, I remember hearing her talk about making a post, telling everyone to leave her alone and stop talking to her about supplements and opportunities. She was against it. And so if you are in that boat, Julia blocked her friends, Emily shouted them out on Facebook. You guys, do you see how things can change? What made you finally want to get started, but what was preventing you from taking that plunge at first?
People often say like no take backs, but I hope I can get a take back because I was mean. I was so mean. I had many friends who are just passionate people, and I didn't understand that passion. I was a brand new mom. I was basically a newlywed, and I didn't have like passion for anything. Like it was deep down inside somewhere, but I just wasn't passionate. So all my friends are messaging me about different things, and then the one person that wasn't messaging me was this girl that was using Plexus, and I was intrigued. And what I noticed was that this woman, a good friend of mine, Holly, she was checking into emergency rooms weekly, like checking into them, like urgent cares. And I'm like, that's so sad. Like, why is she checking in weekly? But then what I really noticed was when she stopped. And I was like, oh, did you find some relief or what was going on? Like, what's going on with you? And she was like, actually, yes, I started this probiotic. And I was like, that word never left my mouth. I just want y'all to know that. I drank like 4 or 5 Diet Cokes a day to get through my day. Like that was my energy drink. That was like a meal. Like Diet Coke was everything. People would send me like home decor with Diet Coke on it because they knew like it was a part of me. And I haven't had one in 5 years. So I want you to know that I found something that gives me my energy and my go-to. It's my mommy drink, right? And this girl was like, I'm drinking this, I'm taking this probiotic. And I was like, and you're not going to message me and beg me to do this? And she didn't. She was like, I mean, if you want to try it. Holly and I are opposites in every way. She's introverted, I'm very extroverted. And for her not to just like come at me full force, I was like, well, share, like, what are you doing? And so I told her, I'm not going to join. I'm not going to do any of this, but you have my attention. So I just silently watched from the sidelines. And then immediate mommy guilt for most of us that have children. Spending money on yourself just seems selfish and ridiculous, and I'll stay on the back burner all day for my kids, right? And that's kind of where I was at. And so I emailed my husband because that's what I was like, hey, so there's these supplements and I think I want to try them. And he was like, no, I'll take you to GNC when I get back. And I'm like, well, you're in Afghanistan, so I'm going to figure out a way to do this. And at that time, a good family friend was like, hey, I need a dog sitter. Will you come stay in my mansion for a week? And I was like, yeah, okay. Like I didn't have a house. I was bouncing around between my in-laws and my own mom, living on a couch. And I'm like, yeah, I'll come stay at your house. And so I stayed with her, and she was just so precious. Like Jen mentioned, they were abundantly blessed. And when you're blessed to be a blessing, and she totally blessed my life. I don't even know if she knows that she's the woman that gave me the money to start my Plexus business. And she was, and I saved it and I calculated out every penny. Like Julie was like, to the dime. Like I remember to the dime how much it was going to be for my triplex and accelerator for 3 months. And I had about a $500 limit, and that's what she gave me. And I'll never forget that. $500 to me felt like $1 million for somebody that worked really, really hard, but never saw that to pay off debt and bills. I was so excited. And so I encourage everyone, like Julia said, have a plan and save. If you want something, what do you usually do? You save for it, right? Whether it's Christmas gifts or your health. I mean, I feel like that's a little bit more important. And so for me, I saved it. And I was still selling clothes and selling things. Like my husband would be like, what happened to that mirror? I'm like, oh, I sold it. He's like, okay, you don't have to do that. You know that, right? I'm like, but I do. If I want my accelerator, I gotta sell something for like $35. So just let me do this. And so funny thing is, I was excited. I started Plexus. My husband came home, met our precious baby. Life was amazing again, right? I was no longer lonely, and I was feeling really great on my supplements. And then he found out. And like Julia going to get her Wi-Fi, I had to do the same because my husband turned off my cellular data. He hated, loathed MLM. He didn't understand it. And I will admit, I did a company right outside of high school, and I called it my network marketing baggage because I had inventory from that company that I carried through 4 years of marriage, and it sat in different garages. And my husband was like, can you just sell that in a garage sale for $20? Like, I don't ever want to look at it again. And so that shame that Jen mentioned, and not only did I have like this shame of my debt and things I brought into marriage, but also this box of inventory that I hadn't looked at in years. So I get it. Some of you have probably tried something before. There's so many companies these days because e-commerce is incredible, but not all companies are created equal. Not all supplements are created equal. And Plexus has surely showed up in that department and showed me how top-notch and unique and different that they really are. And so my skeptical husband would sleep on the couch and I would work my business, and I would wait for him to go to sleep so I could get on his phone, turn my data back on and work. Or I would walk to somewhere on base that had Wi-Fi because we didn't have a car. So did that answer your question, Brooke?
Yes. And so you figured it out and you made a way. And by the way, she mentioned not all companies are created equal. My husband likes to WebMD and Google search, like some husbands watch sports. And so for fun, he's kind of researched other compensation plans, and ours is literally the best that you will find. So more on that later. But Emily, so you made a way. I know your husband has since come around and he's on board. So tell us a little bit about the financial freedoms you've been able to bless your family with.
So after having Sterling, it was like, don't ask me about birth because I will scar you for life. And so after him, I was like, done, not doing this, childcare, nope. Like I'll just work my business, stay home with my baby, life will be grand. Well, when you start looking really good and you're really healthy, you kind of get pregnant again. And so I got pregnant with baby number 2, and my husband was like, okay, I don't really want to deploy and miss out on anything again. We need to have a plan. And my jaw dropped. I was like, you're supposed to be like this Marine Corps lifer. Like I thought minimum 20 years, like minimum. And he's like, no, I think we need to have this conversation. And so I just remember for about 6 months, I'm going to stay in, I'm going to get out. I'm going to stay in, I'm going to get out. And if you are a military spouse and you're watching this, you're like, oh, bless you, sister. I know this conversation so well, because that's benefits, and that's you're so used to living on a certain amount of money, and you're used to being away from family, and like all of that was about to change. And so we had this conversation. Well, right about this time, I had ranked up to Emerald and Sapphire, to 2 of the higher ranks in Plexus, and the only time I'd ever seen $10,000 on any form of payment or check was a big old chunk to my school loan. And so to see that in a payment that was coming into our bank account and not going out, I was like, huh. And I showed my husband. I was like, yo, you might want to take a look at this right now. And I'll never forget, he was behind me doing his schoolwork. We were both full-time students. And I was sitting and watching like X Factor or something with Sterling on the couch. And I got this email and it said, you've got money. And when we get "you've got money" emails, that means that someone has joined our team. And I was like thinking to myself, I haven't talked to anybody today. Like, I don't know if anybody's signing up. And it says, Scott Roberts joined your team. And I just started bawling. I was like, I just turned around and I looked at this man that loathed this passion of mine, right? I didn't have this passion, and I really truly did. It was serving others and living and loving like Jesus did. And that's what I wanted to do for others. And here's my husband like, hey, yo, join your team. And I was like, I love you so hard. Like I was so excited. And we work this business now. He's a senior Ruby ambassador. And it's so cool because he's met some of his best friends. Jen's husband is a sweet, dear friend to Scott. And I love the wisdom and the bond that they share. And he would have never met him if it weren't for him coming around and if God putting this in our life. So I'm just super thankful for that. And because of that, and because of the extra income from his line of work with Plexus, we were able to make the decision together that he would get out of the Marine Corps. And that was when we started to build our first dream home, which we actually just sold, because now we are following in the footsteps of Dave Ramsey and being good stewards with our money. And so that is why we are on track to be debt free in my 30th year of life. I may not be by the time I'm 30, but it will be a 2020 dadgummit. Like it's going to happen. And I know you're going to ask me the next question is what am I excited about with the financial freedom and opportunity? So can I jump to it? Cause I'm here. That being able to say we will have zero debt. Not only do I have goosebumps, not only to have zero debt, but to teach my siblings that it's possible. I grew up with a single mom that worked 4 jobs, 7 jobs, 10 jobs just to feed us, to make sure we got a Christmas present. me and my love language is gifts. Sorry, Mom. And so for years, I watched her, and that instilled in me this work ethic. So I'm so thankful that you said that this is a job, because it is. It's my job. It's my career. And it's not traditional by any means, but neither am I. I'm as extra as the guac at Chipotle, you guys. And Plexus fits right into my life. And I love that. This has created a financial future for us that I never thought was possible, ever, ever, ever. That tithing at church is no longer scary, or like, I don't know about you guys, but when you're at church and you're like going to put the money in the offering plate and you're like, oh, but that could pay for it so much. And God's like, do it, just drop it. And so now we're excited to give. And now we're excited to show others how to be debt free and to be wise. And you can do it in your 30s and in your 20s. And Plexus has completely been the forefront of that. And God has a sense of humor. So I said yes to Plexus. I swallowed my pride, and look at me now. I'm like Drake. Started from the bottom. Now we're here.
So she wanted to know if there was take backs. Anyone who's watching, there's take backs. You can take it back and do this with us, and you can be sharing your story of being able to give abundantly and live abundantly as well. Okay, so one more couple that we want you to hear from. I want to introduce you to my friends, Pastor Kyle and his wife, Cassie. They actually remember a time when finances were so bad that a friend pulled up in front of their house and said, get in the car, and took them to the grocery store, paid for groceries for their family, and wrote them a check to cover their bills for the month, or they don't know what they would have done. I love hearing Kyle talk about that he still to this day keeps food stamps in his wallet to remind himself how far they have come. And since then, now they're able to say yes to adopting children whenever God puts on their heart. They've adopted some even with medical needs, and not have to worry about paying for the needs and wants for their family. So take us back to that time before Plexus, when friends bought your groceries.
Wow, it's kind of crazy to sit here. I've had a lot of emotions thinking about what life was like just 4 years ago. We were below rock bottom. We had always had the dream of having a large family, being in ministry. And our firstborn son, about a year and a half into his life, we found out he had special needs. And that threw our family for a loop. We didn't really know how to help him. So we just started doing all the things, right? We started going to all the therapies, all of the doctors, and everything that we could. But he was in seminary. We had no money at all. And so we just put everything on credit cards. We thought, you know what? Like, our kiddo needs this. And what parent, would not do everything they possibly could to provide for their kiddos? So we just put everything we had to on a credit card. And over the next couple of years, we thousands upon thousands of dollars in credit card debt. And we kept thinking, one day we will be able to start paying this off. We were living for the now, for every minute, every day, instead of the future. And so I feel like most of our marriage was just survival mode. He got his master's degree, his seminary degree, and we were happy. We were so happy. We had beautiful family, but we were always struggling. We were always carrying around that shackle of debt, and it just continued over the years. It started as medical debt, but then as our family grew, we had a bunch of little kids, and then we couldn't pay for groceries. We couldn't pay for our bills. So we just put that on credit card. We just were trying to survive. And I remember talking on the phone to one of my sweet, sweet friends. And I think when you're in that valley and in that rock bottom, you just try to hide it. Like, no one knew that we were struggling. No one knew the pain and the stress that we were walking through. And one of my dearest friends was on the phone, and I was talking to her, and one of my kids came up to me and interrupted me and was like, "Mom, I'm so hungry." And it was at that moment that my voice started shaking. And I remember saying, "Baby, I know you're hungry. I'm sorry." And my friend cared enough about us to start asking questions. And she was like, what's going on? And so we started having this conversation about where we were financially. And about 30 minutes later, she showed up on my doorstep, threw all of us in the car. She took us to the grocery store and told all of the kids, pick out whatever you want. She asked me, she said, Cassie, I want you to get enough for an entire week, whatever you want. She paid for it and took us home and then left us with a check for $1,000 to cover our bills for that month. It was at that moment when I realized there are so many people hurting financially, and it's something that we do not need to cover in shame. It's not something that was because we did something wrong. It was the position that we were in. So we ended up going on food stamps. We ended up getting government assistance. It was kind of the thing I think that was the most humbling experience of our entire life. But when you have children looking at you and saying, Mommy, I'm hungry, you do what you have to do. And it was kind of, I think for you, a pretty humbling
I think one of
time in life.
I think one of the most humbling things is so I was trying to hold down like 3 or 4 jobs just to get us by. Right. So we weren't sitting around just, waiting for something to happen. We were working, like many of the stories you heard tonight. We were just working so hard. And like Emily, and being in the military and ministry, you move a lot. You just move a lot. And you just move every 1 or 2 years. You're just moving. And we've just accumulated all this debt. I remember sitting in and I think some people watching this tonight may have even experienced this, but you're sitting in the government office, that has the terrible elevator art all over the place, right? It's just a depressing place. And the guy across from me says, here you go, here's your food stamps card. And all I heard was, you're a failure. That's all I heard. I mean, here's this kind man working in the government, trying to help us out in our time of need. And all I heard was, you have failed to provide for your family. You're supposed to be this pastor, this husband, this father that's supposed to, you just don't do these type of things. And so I was in so much shame. And I think over the years, we just kind of got to the point where this is our lot. Like, this is just what's happened to us. And our story is just stuck this way. And whenever you're financially struggling, the last thing you care about is your health. I mean, so our health went out the window. And I just felt like we weren't allowed to have the ability to dream anymore. Like we just couldn't. We had all these things we wanted to do we wanted to adopt children, and we wanted to start ministries, and we wanted to provide for our kids a future where they wouldn't have to struggle. But how can we do that when every night we're wringing our hands going, how in the world are we going to pay for tomorrow's bills or tomorrow's food or tomorrow? And I would pick up the oddest of jobs just so I could like literally, have a couple of bucks, just to come in to our bank account. So we just kind of felt really stuck and just focused in this season of life and not even able to get ourselves out of rock bottom.
I'm sure you're right that there's many people watching that completely feel the same way. I know that my husband and I didn't dream again until Plexus, because you get caught in, how am I going to pay the next bill, and what's coming around the corner? There's going to be car repairs. There's this, there's that. Who can even think ahead? So feeling that way, like you're almost drowning, I'm sure that when you heard about Plexus, you thought, we definitely don't need another bill. So what made you finally want to jump in, and how did you figure out how to do that in the budget?
Yeah, absolutely. I had sworn off network marketing for years. It was not something that I had ever seen done the right way. And so it was not something that was even on the table for us. But my health started getting so bad that our finances started having to go towards prescription medicines, towards doctor appointments. It was getting to the point where we were really having to invest in my health. I was struggling to even get up off the couch. My kids, I remember, I was homeschooling all my littles. I had 5 kids at the time. And I just remember like waiting until, like, if I woke up in the morning, I was counting down till nap time. And then in the afternoon, I was counting down till my husband got home and they could go to bed. I was exhausted. And I remember thinking I would do anything to give my kids the mom that they deserve, because this is not how life is supposed to be. This is not what motherhood is supposed to look like. And so for me, I started going to the doctor, and it was actually my doctor who shared with me about really the root issues of my health struggles, and shared with me how there was a way to really begin restoring my health, and it was rooted in the gut. And so when I started hearing that, started doing my research, and I came across Plexus, I looked at the ingredients. I spent a lot of time because, like you said, I didn't have money to just blow on products, right? But when I realized what a gold mine these products were, I knew that they were priceless, and I had to find a way because my health, my future, my family depended on me. And so for us, we ended up getting we had just adopted our sixth child, and we had just brought him home, and a family member had given us I think it was a check for, we were talking about this on the way here. I think it was a check to like take our family out to celebrate.
Just to celebrate the arrival.
And
kids didn't eat that night.
The kids didn't know that I pocketed that money and I used it to buy my welcome pack because I knew it was that important that my kids needed me. And so that's how I always say, when someone is ready, when someone is desperate, they're going to find a way. And for us, I had to make it work.
I love that. And if you ask your kids today, I'm sure they would agree that they are so glad you didn't go to dinner that night, but mommy got started on this. So kind of take us to the good part. Since you started feeling amazing and sharing about this with other people, how has that blessed your family?
Well, I think, and this sounds such a trivial thing, but I will never forget the moment I could walk into a grocery store and use my debit card. Like, one of the most horrifying things for me is to pull out that EBT card, that food stamps card, and like silently like slide it through the slot, quickly put it back in my wallet so no one noticed. And I'll never forget, there was this one moment where the cashier was like, "Sir, I'm sorry that the machine that operated the EBT wasn't working." And she's like, "Is this debit or EBT?" And I was like, it's EBT. And he's like, "Is it debit or EBT?" And I was like, "It's food stamps." Like, she couldn't hear me. And I finally just had to just blurt it out. And everybody behind me just kind of started watching. And I really wanted Jesus to return right there in that moment. I was like, "Please return right now." Because it was the most embarrassing thing. And I'll never forget walking to the grocery store, and two of my boys were with me, and they like, "Man, we always wanted to get this certain type of cereal," which is so ridiculous. But they're like, I was like, "Yeah, grab it." And they're like, "What? But we can't." And I'm like, "Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Grab it." So I think one of there's some grand blessings that we have in our lives because of Plexus. We literally, so Cassie mentioned the first child that we adopted. We then adopted two more kids with special needs that were fully funded by Plexus, which is incredible. And international adoptions around $30,000 to $35,000 a piece. And so it's pretty incredible to see that happen. But there's also just the small things that have been blessings to us. Be able to be a part of our kids' lives. I've been in ministry and feeling like this is my calling. Plexus now becomes this platform for us to be able to give back and extend our ministry. And we're allowed to pick and choose now what we get to do and how we get to do it. And I think one of the most amazing things, when I think about the financial freedom that Plexus provide, it comes right along with the time freedom. And I know this is silly, but just getting up in the morning and taking my kids to school and not having to run to 4 jobs that I have that day or something like that, to be able to go and volunteer at 3:00 in the afternoon in their classroom. To be a part of their everyday lives and know when they grow up, they know Dad was a part of that. He was a part of my rhythms. He taught me these things, and Mom and Dad were engaged in my life. And so that was a huge blessing. And speaking of education, we actually get to choose now our kids' education paths. We do have 4 children with special needs. And because of that, private education was a really big deal to us, but we never in a million years thought we could afford private education for 9 kids. Like, there's no way we can do that. Thanks to Plexus, we're able to easily do that because of the work we put in the hard.
Yeah. And the most exciting thing, I think, for me is the shackles of bondage have been broken from debt. We have completely paid off all of that credit card debt that we had racked up for the years and years and years of struggle. And that has been erased. And I cannot tell you the freedom. If we had kept going the way that we were going, there was no end in sight for us to become debt free. And so it is the most amazing feeling to know that we are free from that. And now we get to give abundantly as the way that we were given to. We were just talking about how excited we are to be able to repay that person who blessed us with groceries and blessed us with that check. And so those are the kinds of things that's freedom for us.
I love that. I love hearing him talk about letting your kids pick out the cereal. Sometimes it is those small things. I remember going to dinner with my husband, and it used to bother me if he would not get water because water is free. And now he can get whatever he wants, and that is okay. I love that. Hearing these stories, I literally have to fight back tears because these are life-changing stories. And I'll tell you, these people, they're at the top of our company, but even at a lower level of leadership, this opportunity has changed our life. I've been able to come home from the classroom. My husband's been able to walk away from college administration. We've been able to build a house, start a ministry, and we travel like a week out of every month. It's absolutely amazing. And I remember my 3rd month in was when I matched my teaching salary. So really quick, I just want to break down the numbers with you for a second. And just in case you haven't caught yet that we do totally love this. It's a job. We're helping people, but this industry really is the wave of the future. Forbes magazine said people have to recognize that this business model is not something to ignore. Community commerce is a growing trend, and it really is. And I think our company is the best. The very first rank, which is just 3 people. You heard Julia say she remembers her first 3. You heard Jen talk about that. That rank of ambassador makes an average of $315 a month, which would translate into 31 and a half hours working outside of the home, making $10 an hour, and a minimum wage job only pays $7.25. Well, if you go to the very middle of our comp plan, Ruby, which just to give you a guideline, I was able to reach that in less than a year. And that rank makes an average of $2,556 a month, which would be 256 hours a month, working $10 an hour. That breaks down into 64 hours a week. That's almost 2 full-time jobs, a full-time job and an extra 24-hour-a-week job. And I'll tell you a secret. I don't know of any Ruby ambassadors that even work 40 hours a week. They are making full-time pay and part-time hours. Well, I'll just clue you in on these kind souls that shared tonight. They're not in it for the money. They're in this for the freedom and the choices. But you guys, their rank makes an average income of $34,000, $848, almost $35,000. They make almost twice in a month what I used to make in a year of teaching. And they do that by doing the things that they just shared with you. That would be 871 hours a week, which is more than we even have, by the way, working $10 an hour. Or if they got an upgrade and made $20 an hour, that's still 436 hours of work. This literally can be your answer as well. You don't have to want to have big dreams of a yacht and a private jet. If you want those things, yeah, you could probably be able to pay for them. But if you're just wanting to figure out how to pay bills, how to bless somebody with Christmas, how to help your husband quit his second job, even if he loves his job, how to adopt, all kinds of things on your heart, I want you to know that not only can these products be your answer, Cassie touched on it a little bit. That's a whole other call, but they're top notch. And all of us have life-changing testimonies with them. But maybe you want to feel better and you want to pay for Christmas too. This really can help you go from financial fear to financial freedom. And as a former kindergarten teacher, I love a theme. So I would encourage you, when we hop off of this, message the person that gave you the link or invited you to this call and just say to them, trick or treat. Sometimes that's easier than bearing our whole soul. Just say trick or treat, and that will allow them to share back with you why they think that you can do this. Because I'll tell you what, this opportunity is not for the few. It is truly for the plenty, and there's room for you. And we want more than anything to hear your story of letting your kids buy whatever cereal they want, of living in a hotel for 3 weeks when you're adopting your son, of bringing your husband home from the military, or letting your children become your alarm. We want that story for you too. So thank you for tuning in, and I can't wait to watch you go from financial fear to financial freedom. Thanks.